You ever get that feeling, late at night, when you're alone in a creaky old building, and every shadow seems to whisper something off? Yeah, that's where we start, with a girl named Elisa Lam, caught in a moment that still haunts the internet. It's January 31st, 2013, and this is the last time anyone's seen her. On hotel surveillance, anyway. The footage comes from an elevator in the Cecil Hotel, downtown LA, a place that's seen better days. Low-resolution infrared, all monochrome and grainy, like something out of a bad dream. No audio, just silent movements that make your skin crawl. And those timestamps? Blurred, obscured. Police say they blocked the timecode before releasing it to the public. The clip starts simple enough. Elisa steps in, young woman in her early 20s, wearing a red hoodie, shorts, and sandals. Casual, like she's just heading out for a snack. She leans forward, punches a bunch of buttons on the panel, more than you'd need for any normal ride. The doors don't close right away. She waits, then presses them again, like she's urging the thing to move. Still, nothing. That's when it gets weird. Elisa slips to the side, peeking out into the hallway, quick glances left and right, like she's checking if someone's following her. She ducks back in, flattens herself against the wall, almost hiding in the corner. Door's still open. She steps out again, waves her arms around, big sweeping gestures, fingers splayed, like she's trying to communicate with someone unseen. Or maybe ward something off. Her movements are jerky, exaggerated, not quite right. She hops back inside, presses more buttons, then out again, playing what looks like a twisted game of peekaboo with the hallway. At one point, she stands in the doorway, counting on her fingers or something, hands moving in patterns that don't make sense. The elevator just sits there, doors wide, like it's mocking her. This goes on for minutes, longer than any elevator ride should. Finally, she walks away down the hall, out of frame, and the doors close at last. Empty car, heading who knows where. You know how these things go. Grainy footage like this, it spreads like wildfire. Everyone thinking they've cracked the code. The clip hit the web, and boom, viral overnight. Millions watched, paused, rewound. Some news outlets even slowed it down in their broadcasts, making every twitch look more deliberate, more eerie. Online sleuthing exploded. Forums, videos, theories piling up. Was she hiding from someone, playing a game, or something darker? Conspiracy speculation ran wild. Ghosts, stalkers, you name it. That snippet became the heart of the mystery, the thing that hooks the world. Why didn't the doors close? What was she gesturing at? In a locked, monitored elevator, how does behavior like that even happen without explanation? It's the kind of footage that sticks with you, makes you question what you see. And it all unfolded in a hotel with shadows of its own. Next, we step back to explore the Cecil Hotel's grim history and the unsettling environment that framed Elisa Lam's stay. That elevator video? It sticks with you, raises all sorts of uneasy questions about what really happened to Elisa Lam. But to get a grip on this story, we have to pull back, take a hard look at the setting itself. The Cecil Hotel, sitting there like a shadow in downtown Los Angeles, back in early 2013. Built in the 1920s, the Cecil was trying to rebrand itself as the Stay on Main by then. But let's be real, a fresh coat of paint doesn't erase decades of grit. It's planted right on the edge of Skid Row, that stretch of LA where the city's forgotten wash-up homeless folks, addicts, people just scraping by. You walk outside, and it's tents lining the sidewalks, the smell of desperation thick in the air. The hotel drew in transients, budget travelers, anyone looking for a cheap bed in a rough part of town. But the Cecil's got a history that's darker than most. Suicides, murders, violent deaths piling up over the years, like unpaid bills. Folks jumping from windows, others meeting ends that no one saw coming. And then there were the guests who made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, holed up there in the 80s, dumping bloody clothes in the dumpster out back after his sprees. Years later, Jack Unterweger checked in, charming his way around while strangling women on the side. Another serial killer calling the Cecil home for a spell. You know how these things go. Places like this attract trouble. Or maybe they brew it themselves. Inside, the layout was a maze of faded glory. Long hallways, rooms that hadn't seen an update since the Depression. The elevators were old, creaky things, monitored by low-res infrared cameras that spat out monochrome footage with timestamps so blurred you could barely make them out. Up top, on the roof, sat 4 big cylindrical water tanks, each about 4 by 8 feet, propped up on concrete blocks with heavy metal lids clamping them shut. Getting up there wasn't easy. You needed a ladder to reach the platform, and access from inside the building was restricted, rigged with alarms to keep folks out. Those tanks supplied water to the whole place. Showers, sinks, you name it. Amy Price, the manager at the time, ran a tight ship amid the chaos. She'd tell you about the daily grind, checking in guests who ranged from wide-eyed tourists to down-on-their-luck locals, dealing with complaints about noise, smells, the occasional fight breaking out in the lobby. Staff kept an eye on things, but in a place like the Cecil, eyes can only catch so much. The clientele was a mix, some staying short-term, others practically living there, blending into the woodwork. Operations hummed along, cleaning crews cycling through, maintenance patching what they could in a building that felt like it was holding on by a thread. Amy recalled how the hotel tried to split itself. Fancier stay on main side for visitors, the grittier Cecil for long-timers, but lines blurred fast. It was a nexus of darkness, all right, where the city's underbelly met cheap lodging, and history had a way of repeating itself in the worst ways. Next, we'll track Elisa's steps from her arrival at the Cecil, piecing together those days before the elevator footage and her disappearance. We've peeled back the layers on the Cecil's haunted past, that grim stage set for whatever was coming. Now, let's follow Elisa Lam as she steps into it, a young woman chasing adventure far from home. It was January 26th, 2013, when Elisa rolled into Los Angeles on an Amtrak train. 21 years old, a student from Vancouver, Canada. She was out there solo, backpacking along the West Coast. You could picture her, wide-eyed, maybe a little thrilled, stepping off that train into the buzz of LA. She'd been posting on her blog, sharing snapshots of her trip, sounding excited about the places she'd seen. But LA has a way of turning excitement into something else, doesn't it? She spent a couple of days wandering the city before making her way to the Cecil Hotel. On January 28th, she checked in. The place was branded as Stay on Main back then, trying to shake off its rough edges with a fresh coat of paint and some budget traveler appeal. Elisa booked a shared room. Cheaper that way, I suppose, sharing space with strangers in a city full of them. But things didn't stay quiet for long. Amy Price, the hotel's general manager at the time, later talked about Elisa's arrival. She seemed like any other guest at first. Polite, maybe a bit quiet. But soon, complaints started trickling in from her roommates. They said her behavior was odd, disruptive enough that the staff had to step in. What exactly was she doing? The details are fuzzy, but it was enough to get her moved. By the end of her first few days, they shifted her to a private room. No more shared space, just Elisa alone with whatever was going on in her head. And here's where it gets personal. She'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. That diagnosis isn't just a footnote. It's a piece of who she was, traveling through a strange city, maybe managing it as best she could. Amy Price remembered her as friendly, chatting with staff, even handing out little gifts. But there were signs, weren't there? Moments that hinted at something unsteady. She'd spend time in the lobby talking to people, seeming engaged. Yet those roommate complaints, they paint a different picture, one of isolation creeping in. The Cecil wasn't exactly a sanctuary. With its mix of long-term residents and transients, it could feel like a pressure cooker. Elisa kept up her blog posts at first, sharing bits of her days, but as the week went on, those updates slowed. Was the hotel wearing on her? Or was it something deeper, tied to her condition, amplified by the solitude of that private room? You know how these things go. Fine on the surface, unraveling underneath. Staff saw her coming and going, nothing too alarming. But looking back, those early days feel like a slow build, a tension coiling tighter. She explored the city, visited bookstores, grabbed coffee, normal stuff for a traveler. Yet the room chain sticks out, a sign that not everything was smooth. Amy Price would later say, Elisa seemed happy enough, no red flags waving, but hindsight is cruel like that, isn't it? By the end of January, she'd been there a few days, settling in, or trying to. The hotel's atmosphere, her own struggles, it all mixed together. And then, on January 31st, something captured on camera would change everything. But that's for next time. We'll break down that elevator footage, frame by frame, and what it might really mean. All right, we've covered how Elisa got to the Cecil and those first quiet days. Now, let's zero in on what happened next. The heart of it all. That strange stretch of time caught on camera in the hotel's elevator on January 31st, 2013. It's the kind of footage that sticks with you, grainy and silent, pulling you right into the dim light of the Cecil elevator. The clip starts simple enough. Elisa steps inside, casual, like she's done it 100 times before. She's wearing glasses, a red hoodie over a dark shirt, shorts, and those flip-flops that slap softly against the floor. You can almost hear them, even though there's no sound at all. No audio recording exists for this elevator footage, which only adds to the chill. It's all visual, leaving you to fill in the blanks. Right away, she leans forward and starts pressing buttons, multiple button presses, hitting what looks like every floor from the top down. The doors don't close. She presses again, jabbing at the panel like it's not listening. Then she steps back, waits a beat, and slips into the corner, pressing herself against the wall as if she's trying to disappear into the shadows. Her movements get odder from there. She peeks out, quick and cautious, like she's checking for someone in the hallway. No one appears. The hall stays empty, but she keeps at it, stepping in and out of the elevator multiple times, each exit hesitant, each return a little more frantic. At one point, she waves her arms in these wide, unclear gestures, hands splaying out like she's explaining something to an invisible listener. Fingers counting off points, maybe, or just flailing. It's hard to tell without sound, without context. She hides again, crouching low in the corner, peeking around the edge. The doors stay open the whole time, refusing to budge. This goes on for minutes, an extended sequence that's tough to watch without feeling a knot in your gut. What's striking is the absence, no other visible persons in the frame, despite how she seems to be reacting to something, or someone, just out of sight. She looks disoriented, communicative even, but it's all one-sided, playing out in this empty box. And those timestamps, blurred, obscured, like the camera itself is hiding details. You can't pin down the exact seconds without squinting. When the footage hit the public, it spread like wildfire. People couldn't look away from this eerie clip. Some media outlets slowed it down frame by frame, which only amplified the unease, the way her movements stretch out, turning odd into outright haunting. It sparked theories worldwide, everyone trying to decode what they were seeing. The emotional response was huge. Shock, sympathy, that creeping dread. You know how these things go. Footage like this looks straightforward at first glance, but it hides more questions in the shadows. Finally, she steps out one last time, vanishing down the hall. The doors close at last, and the elevator moves on without her. That's the end of it, those final captured moments, frozen in time. After this slow-motion breakdown of the footage, we'll turn to what came next, the hours that followed her disappearance from view, leading up to the grim discovery weeks later. We've pulled apart that elevator video frame by frame, and now we're left staring at the void that follows. Elisa Lam steps out of sight on January 31st, and then nothing. The Cecil Hotel keeps humming along, guests checking in and out, but no one hears from her. Those first silent hours stretch into a full day, then two. You'd think in a place like that, packed with transients and long-timers, someone would have noticed something off. But the reports from other guests are thin, mutterings about strange noises in the halls, maybe a door left ajar. Nothing concrete, just the usual chaos of a downtown flophouse. Her family back in Vancouver starts to worry when the calls stop coming. Elisa had been checking in regularly, sharing bits of her trip, but after the 31st, radio silence. That gnawing concern builds. Parents calling the hotel, getting vague answers from staff who barely remember her face. By February 1st, the LAPD is looped in, treating it as suspicious right from the jump. No confirmed sightings, no contacts, she's just gone. The clock ticks through those early days, February 1st to 13th, with officials pushing an active search. They canvass the area, talk to whoever's around, but leads slim to none. Then, on February 6th, the LAPD holds a press conference, putting her face out there, hoping for tips. Reporters gather, questions fly, but it's all procedure. No breakthroughs yet. You know how these things go. Pressers look urgent on TV, but behind the scenes, it's just grinding wheels in the dark. 2 days later, February 8th, Elisa's parents make it official. They formally report her missing to the LAPD and hop a flight from Vancouver down to Los Angeles. Imagine that trip, hours in the air, hearts heavy, landing in a city that swallowed their daughter whole. They hit the ground running, joining the search efforts, pounding pavements alongside cops and volunteers. Handing out flyers, knocking on doors, anything to stir up a clue. But those initial sweeps turn up empty. The hotel's a maze, the streets even more so. Family huddles with detectives, sharing what they know about Elisa's habits, her plans. It's all raw in those moments, the not knowing hanging like smoke in a back alley. Next, we reveal the early investigative steps taken by authorities and family after Elisa's disappearance, capturing the urgency and confusion that followed. So here we are, right in that shaky stretch where the cops kick things off, boots on the ground, chasing leads before the trail goes cold. It started with the LAPD classifying Elisa Lam's disappearance as suspicious. Yeah, they made that call early on. They held a press conference in early February, laying it out for the cameras, trying to rally the public without giving away too much. Suspicious. That's the word they used. And it hung in the air like cigarette smoke in a cheap motel room. From there, the search kicked into gear, teams sweeping the Cecil Hotel top to bottom, inside and out. They combed through every shadowy corner, those dim hallways that seemed to swallow the light. Investigators talked to guests, the ones still hanging around, scribbling down statements that ranged from vague to useless. Staff got the same treatment. Bellhops, maids, the night manager, anyone who might have seen something off. The building's security setup came under the microscope too. Those locked doors that were supposed to keep folks out of places they shouldn't be. Restricted roof access was a big focus. Cops checked the locks, tested the alarms meant to blare if someone pushed through. The hotel had these alarms rigged up to stop unauthorized trips to the rooftop, but you know how these things go. foolproof on the blueprint, forgotten in the daily grind. They poked around the surveillance system, pulling footage from cameras dotted around the place. Hotel staff cooperated, handed over what they had without much fuss. Amy Price, the manager, flat out denied any funny business with the tapes. No edits, no improper handling, she said. And then, on February 13, 2013, the LAPD decided to go public with that 4-minute elevator surveillance video. They released it to the media, hoping it would shake loose some tips, get eyes on Elisa's last known moments. You could feel the desperation creeping in. Standard procedure, sure, but it meant they needed help. Searches extended outside the hotel, too, scouring the surrounding streets, those gritty blocks of downtown LA. Dogs were brought in, sniffing for any trace, while teams canvassed for witnesses who might have caught a glimpse. Early interviews painted a picture of a hotel full of transients, folks coming and going like ghosts. Statements from guests mentioned odd noises at night, but nothing concrete tying back to Elisa. Staff recounted her as quiet, polite, no red flags until she vanished. All this while checking the building's quirks, like how those alarms could be bypassed if you knew the right door to jiggle. It was thorough, I'll give them that, but in a place like the Cecil, thorough often just means stirring up more dust. And with the initial searches wrapping up, attention turned to how the powers that be handled the spotlight, managing the message as the story started to spread. We've walked through those early boots-on-the-ground steps in the case, and now it's time to see how the bigger players, the cops, the coroners, and the press, started molding what the world would think. Let's start with the LAPD. Right after Elisa Lam vanished, they clamped down hard on information. In early February 2013, their press releases painted the whole thing as deeply suspicious, feeding into the uncertainty without giving away much. They released that elevator footage. You know, the one grainy slowed down to a crawl, making every shadow look like a threat. It hit the media like a spark in dry grass, and suddenly everyone's speculating, piecing together theories from pixels. The police controlled the flow drip feeding details that kept the story alive but didn't solve anything right away. Meanwhile, the coroner's office stepped in with their side of things. Ed Winter, the assistant chief coroner, laid out the autopsy process in those initial statements. He explained how they started with a visual exam, then moved to internals, but early on, it was all inconclusive, pending those toxicology results that always take forever. Winter made it clear from the jump, no signs of trauma, nothing pointing to physical assault. That didn't stop the whispers, though. People wanted answers, and the delay just stirred the pot. Then Fred Corral from the coroner's office summed up their conclusions later on. He stated the cause of death was accidental drowning, with Elisa's bipolar disorder playing a significant role in what happened. It was straightforward on the surface, but by then, the narrative had already taken on a life of its own. The media didn't help. They latched onto that slowed, eerie elevator video and ran with it, amplifying every odd gesture, every flicker. Headlines screened suspicion, turning a missing person case into something out of a horror flick. Public discourse shifted overnight. Forums buzzing, theories flying, all because of how these institutions framed it from the start. The LAPD's tight grip kept things mysterious, the coroner's early vagueness added fuel, and the press turned it into spectacle. You know how these things go. Official word sounds solid, but the gaps leave room for shadows to creep in. All of it shaped what people believed, steering the conversation away from facts and into the realm of what-ifs. The delayed toxicology clarity only prolonged the frenzy, letting sensational aspects dominate. In the end, these responses didn't just report the story, they built it, layer by layer, into the enigma we still talk about. Next, we profile the key figures central to the investigation, their roles and contributions, highlighting perspectives that influence the trajectory without recounting events. We've looked at how the big players molded this story from the outside. Now, let's get personal. Dive into the people who were right there in the thick of it, starting with Elisa's folks and the woman running that infamous hotel. David and Elisa Lam, Elisa's parents, they didn't just sit back when their daughter vanished. No, they hopped on a plane from Canada straight to Los Angeles. Hearts heavy, minds racing. First thing, they reported her missing to the cops, pushing for answers in a city that swallows people whole. You can feel their desperation. Parents thrust into a nightmare, far from home, dealing with bureaucracy and grief. They didn't stop there. Come September 2013, they filed a wrongful death and negligence suit against the Cecil Hotel. Claimed the place was negligent, that it played a part in what happened to their girl. They fought hard, contesting the hotel's responsibility, but in the end, the lawsuit got dismissed. Just like that, another door slammed shut. You know how these things go. Families pour everything in, only to hit a wall built by lawyers and fine print. Their motivation? Simple. Justice for Elisa, some shred of accountability in a world that chews up the vulnerable. Challenges piled up, distance, language barriers maybe, the sheer opacity of the system. Yet they kept at it. Their public actions a quiet roar against the indifference. Now, flip the coin, and you've got Amy Price, the Cecil Hotel's manager, back in 2013. She's the one who saw Elisa check in, noted her early behavior. Nothing too out of the ordinary at first, she says. Amy recounts the stay like it's just another day in a place that's seen its share of rough edges. The hotel's operational headaches? Plenty, transient crowds, maintenance woes, the kind that make running a spot like the Cecil a daily grind. But when it comes to the footage, the questions about editing or any misconduct, Amy denies it all, flat out. Says everything was above board, no funny business. Her motivation seems straightforward. Keep the hotel afloat, handle the fallout, protect the reputation, what's left of it. Challenges for her? Managing a building with a dark history, dealing with police, media, and now a lawsuit breathing down her neck. The Lamb's pushing for negligence, Amy standing her ground. It's a clash of grief and defense, raw and unyielding. Coming up, we will tackle the contradictions and anomalies that continue to fuel suspicion despite official conclusions. We've dug into the people caught up in this mess, their stories and angles. But now, it's time to face those nagging contradictions that keep the questions alive. You know, the pieces that just don't snap together in the official tale. Let's start with how Elisa even got to that rooftop water tank. The Cecil Hotel's roof wasn't some open playground. It had limited, controlled access. Locked doors, alarms that should have screamed if anyone tried to slip through. Critics point out, how does a young woman, alone, navigate all that without tripping a single warning? No one heard alarms that night, or at least, no records say they did. It raises eyebrows. Was the system off? Or did someone help her up there? The official line shrugs it off as possible, but skeptics aren't buying it. Then there's the tank itself, that big metal beast, holding the hotel's water. Some debate swirls around the lid's position when they found her. Was it open, making entry easy, or closed tight, like it had been shut after the fact? Reports conflict. Maintenance workers recall it one way, investigators another. If it was closed, how'd she get in and seal it from inside? Physics doesn't bend that easy, not in a dingy old hotel like the Cecil. And speaking of her body, the absence of physical trauma sticks out like a sore thumb. No defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle. Nothing to suggest she fought anyone off. Yet there she was, in a place that screams foul play to anyone with half a suspicion. How do you end up in a locked tank without a scratch, if not by accident, or something darker? You know how these things go. Clean on paper, messy in the dark. That brings us to the CCTV footage. The grainy ghost that's haunted this case from the start. Those blurred timestamps, obscured, hard to read, like someone smudged them on purpose. And the video played at different speeds in releases, fueling claims of tampering or edits. Conspiracy folks latch onto it, saying frames are missing, timelines doctored. Hotel staff denied any footage editing, swore it was raw as they had it. LAPD explained the timestamp blocking a standard procedure, nothing sinister. But those explanations, they haven't quieted the doubts. These contradictions, the access, the lid, the lack of wounds, the murky video, they've kept alternate theories breathing. Skeptics poke at them, building cases for cover-ups or overlooked clues. We're not endorsing any wild ideas here, just laying out the evidence, the tensions that persist. Because in a story like this, the gaps matter as much as the facts. Up next, we'll look at the official investigations and what they concluded about how and why she died. The baseline we're all measuring against. So, we've poked at those nagging contradictions, the ones that keep you up at night. Now, let's step back and lay out what the officials handed down as the final word on Elisa Lam's death. It's June 2013, and the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office releases their report. Cause of death, accidental drowning. But they tag on a contributing factor, bipolar disorder. Yeah, that mental health piece they've been circling since the start. According to the coroner, Elisa had a history of it, and she wasn't always consistent with her meds. Lapses in medication, that's what they point to. Could lead to disorientation, even psychotic episodes. In that state, they say, she might have climbed into the water tank on her own, seeking some kind of refuge or just lost in her head. The toxicology backs this up. No illicit drugs, no alcohol in her system. Just the prescribed medications she'd been taking. Clean as a whistle, if you buy the story. And the body. No signs of physical trauma, nothing indicating a struggle or foul play. No evidence of sexual assault either. That rules out a lot of the darker scenarios people whisper about. Then there's the stuff they found with her. Clothing, her watch, the room key. All of it in or near the tank, matching what she had on in that elevator footage. Supports the idea she went in there willingly, or at least without a fight. No scattered belongings, suggesting she was dragged or chased. Everything points to an accident, amplified by her condition. You know how these things go. Clean on paper, messy in the dark. The coroner leans on parsimony here, the simplest explanation fitting the facts. Bipolar disorder, causing a break, leading to erratic behavior, ending in that rooftop tank. No need for elaborate plots when the straightforward one covers it. But of course, not everyone's buying it. Next, we dive into the theories that push back, the ones fueled by doubt and that endless public curiosity. We've laid out the official line, the one that ties everything up in a neat bow. But you and I both know that's not always the end of the story. Now it's time to dig into those lingering doubts, the theories that refuse to die. Let's start with the darkest one, murder or foul play. Plenty of people out there can't shake the idea that someone else was involved. They point to how that water tank was up on the roof, supposedly locked down tight, hard for anyone to access alone. And then there's that elevator footage, her movements, the way she seems to be hiding or gesturing to someone off camera. Supporters of this theory say it screams unknown assailant, someone who forced her up there, maybe even dumped her in. Officials, though, push back hard, insist there's no evidence of struggle or another person on site. Still, it lingers, doesn't it? On the flip side, there's the suicide angle, or intentional self-harm. This one's built around Elisa's bipolar disorder, her history of mental health struggles. Advocates argue she might have been in a deep episode, leading her to climb into the tank on her own. It's a theory that fits with the solitude of the scene. No signs of force. But critics, including some close to her, say it doesn't match her character or the specifics of her condition. Authorities lean toward accident, not suicide, citing lack of a note or clear intent. You know how these things go. Clean on paper, messy in the dark. Then there's drug intoxication or hallucination. Some folks speculated she was high, seeing things that weren't there, leading to a fatal mistake. But toxicology reports came back clean. No illicit drugs in her system. That pretty much shuts it down, though a few diehards claim the tests missed something. Officials stand firm. No evidence of intoxication beyond her prescribed meds. Shifting gears to the weirder side, paranormal or supernatural explanations. The Cecil Hotel's got a grim past, full of deaths and dark tales. Fans of this theory see ghosts or curses at work, interpreting the elevator video as her interacting with unseen forces. Some even tie it to occult rituals, given the hotel's history. Skeptics and investigators dismiss it as folklore, no hard proof. Related to that, allegations of video tampering or missing footage keep popping up. Conspiracy buffs claim the released elevated tape was edited, sections cut to hide the truth, maybe an assailant or something supernatural. They point to timestamps that seem off, insisting on occult influences or cover-ups. But police and experts have denied any tampering, calling it standard procedure. Finally, there's the wild LAM Elisa conspiracy. This one links her name to a tuberculosis test, spinning tales of bioweapon experiments or government plots tied to an outbreak near the hotel. Supporters see it as too coincidental, proof of foul play on a grand scale. Public health authorities debunked it outright. No connection, just coincidence. These theories pull in all directions, don't they? Each with its believers, each poking holes in the official story. Following this overview, we will look at the personal and professional fallout for those directly involved in and affected by Elisa's death and investigation. So, we've unpacked those theories, each pulling in its own direction. Now, let's look at what came after. The ripples that hit the people who knew Elisa best, the old hotel itself, and folks watching from afar. It starts with the family, doesn't it? David and Elisa Lam, Elisa's parents, they weren't about to let this fade quietly. In September 2013, they filed a wrongful death suit against the Cecil Hotel, claiming negligence, saying the place failed to keep their daughter safe. They wanted answers, some kind of accountability. But the courts? They dismissed it later on. No big payout? No public reckoning? You know how these things go. Clean on paper, messy in the dark. For David and Yinna, this wasn't just paperwork. They'd lost their girl, and now they were chasing shadows of justice. Something to make the pain make sense. I've talked to families like this before. The toll is quiet but brutal, wearing you down day by day. They pushed back against the hotel's stance, insisting there was more responsibility to go around. Closure? It's a word people throw around, but for them, it felt out of reach. Meanwhile, the story didn't stay contained. It exploded online, sparking these intense communities, folks dissecting every detail on Reddit, YouTube, even Chinese video sites. That elevator video alone racked up millions of views, people rewatching, theorizing, turning it into this viral puzzle. It fed into something bigger, you know, a cultural phenomenon that wouldn't quit. Then came the documentaries, like Joe Berlinger's Netflix series in 2021, Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. Berlinger dove in, pulling threads on the mystery, the hotel's history, making it all feel fresh again. The Cecil itself? Its reputation just kept building, or crumbling, depending on how you see it. People still whisper about the place, that aura of decay clinging to its walls. And broader than that, Elisa's case cracked open talks about mental health, bipolar disorder in the spotlight, how it plays out in the shadows of a city. Urban decay got a hard look too, those forgotten corners where risks pile up. Not to mention the conspiracy culture it fueled, online sleuths spinning webs that sometimes caught more fiction than fact. It's all tangled now, part of how we process the unknown. Our next segment will highlight unresolved questions and lingering mysteries that keep this case alive in public imagination. After sifting through the ripples this story sent across lives and cultures, let's turn to those nagging threads that just won't let go. You know, the ones that keep you up at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what really happened up there on that rooftop. It's these unresolved mysteries that turn a closed case into something that haunts us, refusing to fade into the background noise of the city. Start with the basics. How does a young woman, looking sharp and aware in that elevator footage, end up accessing a locked rooftop tank without anyone noticing? The hotel had security measures in place, alarms that should have screamed if someone tampered with that door. Yet, there she was, inside a space that was supposed to be off limits, no signs of forced entry, no trail leading back. Makes you question if those locks were as secure as they claimed, or if something slipped through the cracks in the dead of night. Then there's the puzzle of why she'd remove her clothing and climb into that tank at all. It's not just odd, it's the kind of detail that sticks, whispering questions about what was going through her mind in those final moments. Was it panic, confusion, or something pulling her toward that dark water? We can speculate, but the answer stays just out of reach. And here's where it gets even murkier. No eyewitness accounts, no forensic traces pointing to anyone else being involved. The official line says she was alone, but that absence of evidence for a second person leaves room for doubt, doesn't it? You know how these things go. Clean on paper, messy in the dark. Add to that the video itself, with those blurred timestamps and odd glitches that pop up like shadows in the frame. Why the fuzziness? Was it tampering, a technical flub, or just bad luck? Those anomalies keep the speculation alive, fueling late-night debates online. The authorities treated the footage as straightforward, but to many eyes it looks anything but. Transparency in the investigation feels spotty too. Gaps where you'd expect clear answers, leaving us to fill in the blanks ourselves. And, at the heart of it, the coroner's report and toxicology findings stand as the official word, explaining it away as accidental. But they're not fully satisfying, are they? They tie up the loose ends neatly enough for paperwork, Yet they don't quiet the deeper questions. Why does this case grip us so tightly, even after the files are shut? Maybe it's because these puzzles mirror the unknowns in our own lives, the what-ifs that linger. Public fascination burns on, fed by the shadows of doubt, turning Elisa's story into a mirror for our collective unease. These questions refuse to fade, pulling us back to that hotel, that tank, that night, over and over. Finally, we'll close with reflections on what Elisa Lam's story reveals about mental health, urban vulnerability, and the challenge of elusive truth. We've just picked apart those nagging questions that keep Elisa Lam's story teetering on the brink of the unknown, leaving us all a bit unsettled. Now, as we wrap this up, let's step back and look at the heart of it all, the enigma that started everything. Here's a young woman, caught on camera in that elevator, moving like she's dodging shadows only she can see, in a hotel that's supposed to be locked down tight, with eyes everywhere. And then, somehow, she ends up inside a water tank on the roof, one that's sealed shut, her body discovered days later when the water starts tasting wrong. No obvious signs of anyone else involved, no forced entry, just a lid that's heavy and hard to budge. The official line calls it an accident, tied to her struggles with bipolar disorder. Maybe a breakdown that led her there. But you have to wonder, does that really cover it? The reports leave gaps, details that don't quite line up, making you question if we're missing something bigger. Mental health plays a huge role here, no doubt. Elisa was alone in a strange city far from home, dealing with inner demons that could twist reality itself. In those moments, the line between what's real and what's not blurs, and a place like the Cecil Hotel, with its dark history, only amplifies that fog. Yet, people crave more. They spin tales of foul play, conspiracies, even supernatural forces lurking in the halls. It's like we can't accept the simple tragedy, so we dress it up in mystery to make it palatable, or thrilling. You know how these things go. Truth gets buried under the weight of what we want to believe, leaving the real story gasping in the shadows. The authorities did their due diligence, or so they say, closing the book with a bow on top. But those of us who've stared into enough dark corners know better. Answers feel just out of reach, slipping away like smoke from a forgotten cigarette. At its core, this isn't just a puzzle to solve. It's a reminder of how isolation can swallow you whole in a city that never sleeps. Mental illness doesn't discriminate, and urban decay turns safe spaces into traps. Elisa's story pulls back the curtain on those quiet battles, the ones fought in hotel rooms and empty streets. We may never pin down every detail, but the tragedy lingers, a poignant echo of lives cut short by forces we barely understand. In the end, it's not about the spectacle. It's about a young woman lost in the noise and the silence that followed. This concludes our deep dive. No further segments follow.